All right, welcome back. In part one, we found out our bodies have this incredible built-in system that cannabis interacts with perfectly. A system that manages everything from our pain levels to our mood. But that discovery really just led to a much, much darker question. We left you right on the edge of a cliff, didn't we? We established that for thousands of years, this plant was a huge part of human culture and medicine. And then it felt like almost overnight, poof, it became public enemy number one. So why? What really happened in the 20th century that turned a respected global medicine into a so-called dangerous narcotic? Let me tell you, the answer is absolutely not what you've been taught. Now, the official story, the one you've probably heard a million times, is that modern science just, well, it caught up. The narrative is that new research popped up in the 1930s that supposedly proved cannabis was this menace to society, a major threat to public health that just had to be shut down. Yeah, that story, it's a complete and total lie. The truth is, the ban on cannabis had almost nothing to do with science. It was about power, it was about politics, and it was about a massive propaganda campaign built on fear. So, to really understand the lie, you first have to get a handle on the truth that they buried, and here it is. For the vast majority of modern medical history, cannabis wasn't just legal, it was legitimate mainstream medicine. I want you to just let this number sink in for a second. 92 years. What does that even represent? That's how long cannabis was officially listed in the U.S. Pharmacopoeia, which is the official government-recognized list of all legitimate medicines. We're talking from the Civil War era all the way to the dawn of World War II. For nearly a century, your doctor could prescribe it just like any other drug. And they absolutely did. It was prescribed for chronic pain, for seizures, for insomnia, for nausea. This wasn't some back-alley folk remedy, okay? This was a staple in the American medicine cabinet. So the million-dollar question is, what changed? So how did a respected medicine, one used for 92 years, suddenly become the devil's weed? It wasn't because of some groundbreaking scientific discovery, no. It was because of a calculated, vicious propaganda campaign. And you have to meet the architect of cannabis prohibition, a man named Harry J. Anslinger. See, after alcohol prohibition ended in 1933, Anslinger's agency, the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, was basically about to become irrelevant. He desperately needed a new enemy to justify his budget and his power. And boy, did he find one. And here is the raw, unvarnished truth of his motivation. Anslinger's campaign was explicitly and disgustingly racist. He didn't focus on the plant itself, he focused on who was using it. Jazz musicians, Mexican immigrants, Black Americans. He literally weaponized racial prejudice to manufacture fear. His bureau launched this insane media blitz, which all led up to films like Reefer Madness. Now, these weren't documentaries, they were straight-up horror films. They created this fictional narrative that cannabis caused sudden insanity, superhuman strength, and uncontrollable violence. And they aimed that narrative squarely at marginalized communities. So, with the public completely terrified, Anslinger made his big move. But he was clever about it. He knew an outright ban might get challenged in court, so he went for a backdoor approach instead. The Marijuana Tax Act of 1937 didn't technically make cannabis illegal. No. Instead, it just strangled it with red tape. It imposed a crippling tax, about $1,800 in today's money, and this impossible maze of paperwork. It was designed from the ground up to make legal access so difficult and so expensive that doctors and farmers would just give up, and it worked perfectly. But the final nail in the coffin, that came in 1970. At the height of the war on drugs, the government didn't just want to ban cannabis. They wanted to put it in a scientific lockdown, making it illegal to even study. They classified it as a Schedule I drug. Now, you have to understand the criteria here. To be Schedule I, a substance has to meet all three of these conditions. But the most important one, the linchpin, is number 2. Absolutely no accepted medical use. Remember that. Just burn it into your brain. And this just brilliantly illustrates the scientific absurdity of the whole situation. Under this law, cannabis was officially declared more dangerous with less medical potential than cocaine, than methamphetamine, and even fentanyl. This classification wasn't based on science at all. It was a political statement, plain and simple. And the impact was catastrophic. For more than half a century, the Schedule I status created this perfect catch-22. Scientists couldn't research the medical benefits of cannabis because the government claimed it had no medical benefits. It was a total scientific lockdown. But you can only suppress the truth for so long. Over the last couple of decades, even with all the legal hurdles, a few persistent scientists and some really determined families started to punch holes in that wall of prohibition. And this is the story that changed everything. It started with parents of children suffering from these catastrophic, untreatable forms of epilepsy. They were hearing anecdotal stories about CBD, which is a non-psychoactive compound in cannabis. Well, that led to rigorous clinical trials that produced results you simply couldn't deny. And in 2018, the FDA did something historic. They approved Epidiolex. The approval of Epidiolex wasn't just some medical breakthrough, it was a legal bombshell. For the very first time, the U.S. government formally acknowledged that a compound from the cannabis plant has real medical value. This completely shattered the legal justification for its Schedule I status. It blew the whole thing wide open. And since that dam broke, the trickle of research has become an absolute flood. We are finally getting a clear picture of what this plant can actually do, free from all the propaganda of the past. Today, millions of people use cannabis legally as a medicine. And what's the number one reason, by a huge margin? It's for the management of chronic pain, often as a direct alternative to highly addictive opioids. And the validated evidence just keeps piling up. We have an FDA-approved drug for epilepsy, we have strong evidence for its use in chronic pain, it's approved for nausea in chemotherapy patients, and it's used to relieve the painful muscle spasms that come with MS. I mean, think about it. The very things it was used for 100 years ago are being proven right by modern science today. The story of cannabis is this powerful, cautionary tale. It just goes to show how easily politics and fear can suppress scientific truth for decades, locking away potential treatments from people who need them. It really makes you wonder, if they were so wrong about this one plant for so long, what other secrets are hiding out there in nature, just waiting for science to finally get the freedom to investigate?